Hi there, welcome back to the Python Mastery Crash Course. I'm Gority Golden and I'm super excited to help you master the fundamentals of Python programming. In this video, we are going to explore lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. So let's dive right in. First up, let's talk about lists. A list is a collection of items that can be of any data type, including strings, integers, floats, and other data types. So lists are always denoted by the square brackets and they are mutable. By lists being mutable, meaning that they can always be modified after creation. Now regarding the syntax of lists, you should know that lists are always denoted using square brackets, meaning that, for example, let's say that we want to create a list of our favorite colors. You're going to go ahead and define a variable. For example, we can say favorite colors, and we are going to assign the variable favorite colors our favorite colors. For example, let's say that favorite colors are pink, white, green, and black. So currently this list is storing the favorite colors, and the items in the list are of type str, meaning that the data type of the items is of type string. And you should know that a list can store items of different data types. For example, let's say that we have a variable that is storing marks, and for example, let's say that a student scored 100 in some subject, and then 78, 99, and maybe 69. So whenever you create lists, you can still confirm their data types by working with the type function. So we are going to work with the type function, and then the variable that we are going to pass in. For example, let's say that we want to confirm the data type of the variable favorite colors. So I'm going to go ahead and run the program. You can pretty see that the type or the data type of the variable favorite colors is of type list. So we can also pass in the type for the marks, and we can go ahead and confirm it as well. So you can also see that the variable marks is of type list. So having created our lists, we can go ahead and print them for now. We can just have this commented as the output, such that we print, for example, the favorite colors, and we can also go ahead and print the marks. So having run the program, you can see that these are the items that we have defined, and the fact that these are lists, you can pretty see that we are working with the square brackets. Well, since lists are mutable, there are different operations that can be performed on them. For example, one is the indexing. Now, when it comes to indexing, this is an operation that is always used to access specific elements from the list using its index. For example, let's say that we wanted to access our first favorite color, which is pink. So the way we work with indexing is that you always access the variable itself, which is favorite colors, and having you accessed it, still we work with the square brackets. And the fact that we want to access pink as our favorite color, you should know that lists are array-like structured. By them being array-like structured, meaning that the first item in the list is always at index 0. So that means that the pink item is having an index of 0, then white is at index 1, then green is at index 2, and then black is at index 3. So we all know that the total number of items in this list is 4, meaning that you would actually say that the first index is 1. By the fact that the lists are always array-like structured, you should always know that the first position is always 0. So meaning that for us to be able to access the element at the first position, which is pink, we pass in our index as 0. So we are going to go ahead and print this out so that we have a look at the output of indexing. So you can see that our item has been accessed, which is pink. And this is the same case if we actually wanted to go ahead and access any other item. For example, if you want to access the second item, you access it using index 1. Same applies to all these other items in the list. So the third item is always the total number of items in the list minus 1. So if our list is having 4 items, that means that is going to be 4 minus 1 to make it 3. And you can now see that all the items have been outputted. So we are having pink, white, green, and black. So generally, this type of indexing is always positive indexing. So this is how we work with positive indexing, where we always work with positive values of the index. But there are also cases whereby we work with negative indexing in a way that we want to access the items in the list. So with negative indexing, it's a little bit different in a way that, one, for us to be able to access the items in the list, just like they have been listed here, is that we always access the items starting from the right instead of the left. So that means that, one, if we wanted to access, for example, the last item is going to be at index -1. Then the second last is going to be at index -2. Then the color white is going to be at index -3. And then the first item is going to be at index -4. So with negative indexing, we index starting from the right. And in positive indexing, we index starting from the left. So to update this, we are going to have our first item at position -4. Then the second one at position -3. Then this is going to be at position -2. And the last item is going to be at position -1. So I'm going to go ahead and output this as well. So you can see that we are still having the same output in a way that our items have still been outputted in the right order. So having looked at indexing, the other operation is slicing. So when it comes to slicing in lists, it is always used to access a subset of elements in the list by using a slice. So for example, let's say that we want to access the first and the second items from our favorite colors list. That is, we want to access pink and white. So the way slicing works is that, one, you first of all access the variable, which is favorite colors. And so for you to be able to slice, we always access the square brackets. Now, with slicing, we always work with a slice in a way that, one, we have the start value and then the end value. For example, if we want to access the first and the second items, which is pink and white. So you should know that pink is at position 0. Its index is 0, and then white has an index of 1. So that means that for us to be able to access those two items, we are going to first of all pass in the index of pink, which is 0, and then add the colons. With slicing, you should know that we always add the colons to create a slice. Then the last item that you want to access. Now, the fact that white is at index 1, for us to be able to make it inclusive, we have to increment its position to 2. Meaning that it's going to be the current index of white, which is 1, plus 1 to make it 2. So we are now going to go ahead and print this to look at the output. So you can now see that we are having pink and white. So how about cases whereby, one, you know that, okay, white is at index 1. That means that you're going to go ahead and pass in index 1. So we can clear this up. So you see that when you only pass in index 1, it only outputs pink. Meaning that for you to make the other item inclusive, you have to increment its position with a 1. So that means it's going to be a 1 plus 1 to make it 2. So it's the same case for cases whereby we wanted to access, we actually wanted to only print pink, white, and green. So green is at index 2. That means that for us to make green inclusive, we are going to have this incremented to 1, which is going to be 3. So we can have this copied out and pasted here, such that we have first, second, and third colors. So for us to include the third color, this is going to be a 2 plus 1 to make it 3. So you can see that we are having pink, white, and green. We can also try to print green and black. So the color green is at index 2, and then black is at index 3. So the way we can work with this is using different approaches. So one, we know that green is at index 2, but the fact that black is the last color, we can actually leave the last index position empty. So let's test this and see whether it's working fine. So you can see we are having green and black, meaning that after green we want to include all the other colors. So the other approach to this is, one, we know that black is at index 3. So for us to make black inclusive, that means that we are going to add a 1 to its current index. So if it is 3, that means that we are going to pass in 4. So we must have the same output, and it is true because we are having green and black. Now there would be also cases whereby, one, let's say that we try to work with this kind of slice in a way that we are not passing in any first position and not the last one either. So you see that it goes ahead and prints all the items in the list. So we can have this commented as all colors. Then we can also try out for cases whereby we are passing in 2. So when you only pass in 2, you can see that it's only printing pink and white. So in other words, it's also accessing only the first 2 colors. So having looked at slicing, we are now going to look at appending. So with appending, we always add new items or elements to the end of the list. So we are still going to make use of our favorite colors list. For example, let's say that we want to add a new favorite color to our list. Let's say that we want to add blue. So when it comes to lists, by default, there are always built-in methods that are used with lists in terms of Python. So for example, one of the methods is append, and the way we access this method is by, one, accessing our list, then providing it with a period or a full stop as commonly said. Now when you add the period operator, you can see that these are some of the methods that can be used with the lists. And the current one is append. So since it is a method or a function, you go ahead and add the parentheses, and it also gives you more insights that it's going to append an object to the end of the list. So we are now going to go ahead and add our new color, which is blue. So for every append operation, you always have to print out the variable so that you look at the newly added items. So for that case, we are going to go ahead and print our favorite colors variable once again, such that we confirm that the color blue has also been added. So you can see that blue is now inclusive among our list items. So in addition, we can also try to add a new color as well. Let's say that we want to add purple. So having appended purple, we are still going to go ahead and access our list to confirm that purple has been added. Yeah, so you can see that purple is also added to the list. So we can now look at the next operation, and our next operation of discussion is the insert. So the insert operation on lists always inserts a new item at a specific index in the list. So for example, let's say that we wanted to add a new color like yellow, and we want to add yellow at the start of our list. So still with the insert, you should know that we always work with the insert function, which is a built-in method on lists. So that means that you first access the favorite colors list, then you add the period, then you check out the insert. So with the insert, you always have to specify the index. just like it's listed here, the index and then the item that is going to be inserted. So we are going to insert yellow at the first position. So this is going to be yellow. So the index is 0 for the start at the first position, and then the item that we want to add is yellow. So having added that, we are still going to go ahead and print our list. And here we go. So yellow has been inserted. So we can now look at the next operation, and this is remove. So just like it sounds, the remove operation is always used to remove the first occurrence of a specific element in the list. So in addition to this, we always remove a specific element that has been specified within the remove function. For example, let's say that we want to remove yellow. So we go ahead and access the list, and then we always work with the remove function for this operation. So all we have to do is to pass in the value that is going to be removed. So we want to remove yellow, and having removed yellow, we want to also look at our updated list. So let me clear this up. So you see that initially yellow was inclusive of our favorite colors, and now having removed it, you can now see that it is no longer inclusive. So let's also look at the sort operation. So just like it sounds, the sort operation is always used to sort the elements in the list, and it can either be an ascending order or a descending order. Let's say that we wanted to sort our items. So when we are going to access our favorite colors variable or our favorite colors list, then for us to be able to sort, we access the sort function. So by default, it always sorts the items in ascending order. When you try to hover on it, you can see that we can always work with the reverse. That is if you want to sort the items in descending order. So let's have a look at our new items that will have been sorted. So you can see when we apply the sort operation, we are having the items sorted in ascending order from black, blue, green, pink, and lastly to white. So with sorting, we can also apply, we can pass in the value for, we can reverse, that is if we want the items to be sorted in descending order. So dot sort. So we have the reverse parameter, which is a boolean. So that means that we can pass in reverse, and since we want to have the items sorted in descending order, we can pass in the true value, and then you go ahead and look at our new items. So having them being sorted in descending order, you can see that we are starting from white, then purple, and then lastly to black. So we do have another operation, that is the reverse operation on lists in Python. And with reversing, we always reverse the order of the elements in the list. So we always access the favorite colors, then still we have a built-in reverse function that can be used to perform this operation. And having applied that function, you still have to go ahead and access the variable so that you look at the reversed items. So in terms of reversing, when you look at this output, it's more like it's actually sorting the colors in ascending order. So to summarize the operations, we can also look at some loop operations or some iteration operations where we also want to loop through the items in the list. So for us to work with some iteration operations, recently we looked at control flow statements, where we also looked at for loops. So we can use a for loop to achieve this operation. So we can say for maybe color in our favorite colors, such that we print the color. And since we also have our max variable, we can also try to perform some simple operations like for mark in max, such that we still go ahead and output the items in the max list. And still in addition to this, we can try to find the total sum of the max. Initially, the total sum is always 0, such that if we do have a for loop and our max variable, we are going to say for mark in max. So we iterate through each item in the max variable or in the max list. Then for the code block, we add whatever operation that is going to be performed. So in this one, we want to update the total. So we are going to access the total variable such that we have it incremented to the total items in the list. So total will be plus or equal to the mark, such that we move out of the scope for the for loop, and then we go ahead and print the total. Otherwise, there are cases whereby you actually, instead of moving out of the loop, you forget and have this within this scope. So it's going to go ahead and initially the total is going to be 0. So when it iterates and accesses the 100, it's going to have 100 incremented or summed up to 0, meaning that it's going to print 100, then it's going to iterate over the next item, which is 78. Then it's going to have 100 summed up with 78 to make 178. Then when it iterates over to the next item, which is 99, it's going to have 178, then incremented to 99. Then that will be evaluating to something like 277. Then it's going to print 277. Then it's going to iterate to 69. Then within 69, it's now going to print the final result, which is 346. And if that is the kind of approach that you want, then you can always go ahead and leave it this way. So let's look at both approaches. So you can see that initially we outputted the items in the list of the favorite colors, and now printing out the items in the max list. This is what we have. Now to find the total sum, you can see that we are having 100, then 178, then it goes ahead and prints 277, just like I had explained, and then finally 346. But generally, most of the times, in case you are only interested in printing out the final result, then you do not have to bring in this print statement within the for loop scope. So the updated approach is this, whereby we are only having the final result, and to customize it furthermore, we can distinguish it from these other outputs, such that we say that total sum is this much, then we pass it in as the total. So you can see that the total sum is this much. So still with lists, we can always find the total length of the items. So for us to be able to access the total length of our favorite colors, we access the len function, and then we pass in the variable. And still, this is also similar to when we want to find the total length of the max variable. So now go ahead and print this out as well. So you can see that the current length of our favorite colors is 6, and then the other one of the max is 4.